Good evening, everybody. This is Jack Thomas at the Happy Spot. Tonight, I'm sitting on West 44th Street in the Producers Club. Tonight is a special evening for me personally and professionally. I'm 58 years old. I remember being 5 years old, working in this neighborhood 53 years ago with my dad, going to work, driving around, meeting everybody on the west side of Manhattan, and how it changes you. And we all have that with our family where it changes you. But then you meet someone in your life where you're professionally introduced to something that you pause and go, huh. And Dr. Perry Knoppert, I'm so grateful. I had met him on a podcast through a business coach. And she said to me, she goes, you have a little autism. You're a little on the spectrum. And I'm like, I'm from New York City. How'd they miss me? And that's a generational thing that they didn't give us diagnosis going back 40, 50 years ago. And I have Dr. Perry Knoppert who looked at me and said, hey, Jack, do you know this, this, and this? And I said, I have no idea what you're saying. So tonight we're bringing live into New York City SHRM. He is my business partner. That doctor in the mishpucha, you put us together as one big Yiddish family. And I'm going to turn the floor over to the two of you gentlemen so we could hear about Dr. Perry Knoppert and coming through our host, not Doctor, but Anshar, who is a PhD in his behavioral training. I'm going to drop off. Welcome to the video podcast at talkradio.nyc. And this is going to be a party, everyone.
And welcome to the Happy Spot podcast, where we get honest about what it takes to build mentally well, emotionally intelligent, and human-centered organizations. I'm your host, Anshar Seraphim. Thank you for that introduction, Jack. Today, we're diving into a subject that speaks to the heart of organizational transformation, the experience of nonlinear thinkers, people who think differently, feel deeply, or connect dots others don't see. These are often the most creative people in the room, and yet they can also be the most overlooked, underutilized, or even feel pushed out by organizations. So, joining us is someone who knows this experience intimately, Dr. Perry Knoppert, aka Dr. Octopus. He's the founder of the Octopus Movement, a global network of nonlinear thinkers working to address complex global problems by celebrating cognitive diversity. He's joining us from Europe, so thank you very much for staying up late. How are you, Perry?
It's midnight, Anshar. It's super late, but I didn't want to miss this for the world to be on talk radio in New York City. And please, I'm not a doctor. I'm not Dr. Perry Knoppert. I'm Dr. Octopus, but I'm not an official doctor. Please keep that in mind because someone in South Africa started calling me Dr. Octopus. And I really liked that. I thought it was really funny. Being the founder of the Octopus Movement, he started to call me Dr. Octopus. And that's why my nickname is Dr. Octopus, but I'm not an official Dr. Perry Knoppert. I'm just Perry Knoppert.
Well, I could contrast that opinion. In academics, when we have someone who wants to get their PhD, it's through peer acceptance that we do that. And if a person who has a PhD is calling you doctor, that means a lot more than you might think it does. So,
Oh, oh dear.
so obviously, this might be a new topic to some people, and I know that you've shared your journey about getting into this work, and had a deeply personal experience that kind of guided it. So, would you mind starting us there? What started this whole idea for the Octopus Movement for you?
Yeah, well, a lot, and sure, I think it started with me being weird. I've been weird my entire life, and
I relate.
weird is a here, here. And weird is a weird word, right? Because we don't want to call ourselves weird, and it's just someone else who calls you weird. But then after a little while, you're okay by saying you're weird because you rather have you say it about yourself than someone saying it about you. So weird is something strange, but I've been different my entire life. And 4.5 years ago, I did something that made me even more different than many other people. Um, I became homeless by choice. I was super curious. Lots of things happened in my life, and I was on this crossroad where things went wrong, and I was like, you know what? You can keep it all. I gave everything away, and I disconnected from everything. And I want to show you so many things, Anshar, and because I was expecting this question, where is it coming from? And it also came from these little note cards. I went back to find them. During the homelessness, I was interviewing weird people, misfits, curious misfits, because I've always had an interest in them. Like what's moving, what's happening. And they were all saying that they were a bit lonely. And they were all saying that if only other people would understand them better, they could do so much more. So they felt isolated because they were different, and I could relate to that. So during that homelessness, I was homeless for 7 months. I discovered so many things. And of course, everybody has a talent, and that talent doesn't always fit in the box. And during the homelessness, I discovered so much that after my homelessness, I thought, okay, if I can survive this, I can survive. What do I do now after this period? And I decided to create a global nonprofit called the Octopus Movement, because I think we're missing out on an opportunity if we're not looking at people that don't perfectly fit in the box.
Yeah, and I relate there because I spent 11 months homeless in one of the coldest cities in the United States. And that was a big eye-opening experience for me too. Not just seeing people that were different or didn't fit in the box, but also seeing, especially here in the United States, how much mental illness runs rampant among the indigent population. There's a big gap there. So obviously, we're going to start circling around this whole topic of being weird. But talking about nonlinear thinking, because I know that subject can confuse some people. I know that there are lots of different ways that a person can become a nonlinear thinker. One
Yeah.
is being a multi-potentialite. They've done so many different things in so many different spheres, and that changes the way that they navigate information and solve problems. Um, but then also nonlinear thinkers can be neurodivergent, like me with autism. You know, uh, Not necessarily solving problems with their initial try the same way as other people. And I myself am a member of the Octopus Movement. I'm proud to say I'm the VP of critical thinking, so I get to help with the think tanks and the papers and stuff. And I know that there are lots of different ways that people can be nonlinear. So, for the people who are just hearing this term for the first time, can you help our audience understand what nonlinear thinking really is and how someone might recognize it in themselves or others, especially if it shows up in the workplace too? Because I know we're talking about that feeling of being lonely and pushed away. I think maybe some
Mhm.
context would help so we can kind of frame our discussion.
Yeah. So your question is, can you explain nonlinear thinking?
Hmm.
No, I can't. No, it's impossible. What I can do is explain a little bit about nonlinear thinking, and to start by explaining that nonlinear thinking is not the opposite of linear thinking. Most people think about that in a linear perspective when they hear the word nonlinear, so it's the opposite of linear. No, it's not. For me, nonlinear thinking is the space between thoughts. And that concept is maybe a bit weird, but for me, nonlinear thinking means not thinking at all. We're we're conditioned in our educational system, we're conditioned at home, we're conditioned when we grow up in a way of thinking. Most of the time, that way of thinking is very linear. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. This is how we're trained, and this is where we achieve our results. But there is something else going on in our brain with all of us, and that's called nonlinear thinking. That is a thought that comes out of nothing. All of a sudden, you have an epiphany or an idea, and it's often linked to creativity. Nonlinear thinkers are creative. Why is that? They can dive into the space between thoughts, and creativity just pops up, because true creativity is not linked to linear thinking. Innovation is linked to linear thinking. You have a result, you have an experience, you combine these things in a linear way together, and that creates innovation. true creativity is nonlinear thinking. It's new. It is not linked to anything else. It's a new thing that all of a sudden appears. And I think in today's world, we need to establish a new kind of wisdom where we dive into our nonlinear brain, our nonlinear mind without thinking, because we need that, because everything is a little bit too much conditioned. I hope that explains a little bit what nonlinear thinking is. And you spoke about neurodiversity and multipotentiality. I can explain something very quickly why neurodiversity is so interesting in the space of nonlinear thinking. We spoke about being weird. So when I was little and when I was at school, and I have severe dyslexia, it's horrible. And so every time I was at school, a teacher was telling me that I was doing things wrong. I was making mistakes all the time, every day, always. That does something to your mind. I can assure you that. So I'm constantly given the message that I'm doing something wrong. So you're thinking about yourself, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And the conditioning of a neurodivergent mind is very interesting because you start questioning yourself what you're doing. So you build up a relationship with your own thinking, with your own mind. And therefore, you understand how your thinking works. And you can allow chaos to be in your life. And chaos is a very interesting subject related to nonlinear thinking. So a linear mind is very much in control, wants to know what's happening in the next 5 minutes, next week, next day, next month. And a nonlinear mind has more capability to trust their own minds and to allow chaos to be in their lives. And that's nonlinear thinking. And I think everybody is a nonlinear thinker, but neurodivergent minds, multipotentialites, creatives, people that are different, are more nonlinear than typically linear thinkers. Does that make sense, Anshar?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we do have to cut here for a commercial break soon, but I did want to share that one of the things that I found most impactful when it came to understanding nonlinear thinking, because I was trying to put together all of our insights for some of the white papers, was recognizing that the initial approach that people use to solve a problem is very, very different depending on the way that they think. And it's not that we all can't use established methods to sometimes arrive at conclusions, but there is this need, I think, in education to funnel us down to a singular method, to punish creativity, to stop collaborative learning. And it was one of the things that we kind of learned from doing the paper on education. So after we get back from the commercial break, what I would like to do is talk a little bit more about this global movement and how it expanded the way that it did, and get some of your insights on some of the challenges of that process and what it's been like for you as a leader. So if you're enjoying this conversation with Dr. Octopus and myself, make sure to stay tuned, and we'll be back shortly after this commercial break.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hi there, welcome back to the Happy Spot. This is your host, Anshar Seraphim. Today I have with me Dr. Perry Knoppert, Dr. Octopus. We're talking about the whole concept of nonlinear thinking and how that developed into an international movement, if you're just tuning in with us. So welcome back from the break, Perry. I wanted to touch on how nonlinear thinking, this idea of meeting these people while you were off on your journey, how did that evolve into an international movement for creative problem solving and inclusion? How did that happen?
What the hell happened, right? Um, during the homelessness and during the understanding that I have a very nonlinear brain and I live in a linear world, I started to dive into in that space between thoughts. And I wanted to show you this. I've never showed anyone, but these are the cards that I wrote during that time, during the space between thoughts. So these are notes that doesn't make any sense. I was just writing them down every time something popped up. Very nonlinear. And I was interviewing people that were slightly different. So I started with 50 people together and like, okay, let's bring these nonlinear thinkers together. And everybody was so pleased because finally they could be themselves. They don't have to wear a mask or to pretend that they're someone else. So they were so excited about that. And because we called it the Octopus Movement, and the octopus is a symbol for a curious misfit. And later I found out that the octopus is a symbol for so many other things. And by nonlinear thinking, I selected the octopus as a symbol for our movement. And thanks to the octopus and nonlinear thinkers together, it exploded. We have now more than 9,000 members. And I just did a check in the database. We're in 123 countries right
Oh,
now
wow.
with the octopus movement.
Oh, wow.
And in
So
less than 4 years, it's crazy.
that's that's absolutely crazy. And it even got you featured in Forbes, which I thought was really cool. So let me ask about, kind of tie this down to the specific, because here at the Happy Spot, one of our goals is to talk about how we could use these insights from these experts to be able to improve spaces at work and organizations. So let's talk about organizations. What do you think are the common ways that workplaces and organizations inadvertently marginalize nonlinear and neurodivergent thinkers? Because I know we already touched on that topic with education, and that's a big systemic problem at the bottom for culture. But what happens when we get to work and we're nonlinear?
Okay, so everybody has talent, right? And you want to bring your talent into your daily life, and you bring it to work, and you have a nonlinear mind. But at work, it's structured in a linear way because they want to manage everything as good as possible. There is no room for nonlinear thinking. You need to do this inside of your box, and then you're fine. And maybe sometimes you can step out a little bit, but that's it. This is a waste. This is the problem. So you're putting people into a box, and that's the only way you can manage them. But this is ancient history. This is old fashioned. This is not how you should be managing people. This is an old-fashioned way of leadership. You want to be in control, you use the linear method, and that's it. At the Octopus Movement, I can prove it works in a different way. We're using nonlinear thinking in our leadership, in our management. We don't have any rules within the Octopus Movement. So we're giving space for people to be themselves and to explore where they want to be. And of course, you still need to manage things. And of course, I have Excel sheets and data sets and whatnot. But there is a possibility of space for people to be exactly who they are and to bring their specialty, the things that they're very good at with them in that space where everything is possible. I don't know if I explain it correctly in this way, unsure, but you know what I mean, right? But if it's too linear, I always say, and I don't know if I can say this here, but I'm Dutch. In the Netherlands, we say stupid things sometimes. Um, it feels a bit like a linear system is tight underwear. You need to do it exactly like this, and if not, it's a problem. And that kills creativity, and it kills the possibilities to solve difficult issues.
So if people are in that organization and they're walking that boundary line between, tolerance and inclusion, what does true inclusion look like in an organizational setting? Because I know that because of the old way of doing things, corporations and organizations, they're constantly trying to, talk about alignment, getting everyone aligned and doing the same thing. And you're right, it does kill creativity. So, and I know from my own nonlinear experience in education, the way that I understand things is to break them apart and look at all the pieces. And
Mhm.
if I try to do that in a traditional classroom, it derails everything that the instructor was, supposed to cover, even if it helps my understanding. So, what is inclusion of that sort, respecting cognitive differences, what does it look like in an organizational setting? What insights have you gotten from running the Octopus Movement and making a space for people who are nonlinear and letting them succeed? And what inspiration can you give to other people who are looking to do the same?
Well, I think a lot of people are. Let's look at the other side. So if you have a very nonlinear mind and you work in an organization where everything is very linear, chances of burnout is huge because you're frustrated because you have insights, but nobody's listening to you because that's not your job, right? And you can see that if someone would change this and that, that would have a great effect on the whole company or on the business or on the product, but nobody's listening to you. It's not your job. So it causes a burnout because this is not your avatar. Your avatar is in a box that needs to do this, but you have many more insights, and it's you're not allowed to think outside of the box. And why is this happening? It's an old way of leadership. It's a very linear structure because then you can control everything, then you can manage everything. And we don't want chaos. We definitely don't want chaos. But is that true? Is chaos such a bad thing? Do you always need to be exactly in control? And I know, Anshar, I know a lot of very good managers who are very successful in the corporate world, and they're so linear. They're so driven in that little box, and they control everything. And I'm always wondering, what are they really good at? Are they good in leadership, in managing the people, or are they very good in reporting the details to the next layer of management? And I think that second thing is what's really happening. So there is an opportunity that we're missing out here if we're staying in that linear system of controlling everything, of being putting everything in little boxes. And I think it has a huge consequences for people that are very nonlinear, have many ideas, and they get into a burnout. They feel
So,
miserable and they go to work like, okay, I'm not saying anything. I'm do what I need to do, and that's it then. And those are non-playable characters. You don't want them in your organization, right?
well, right, because you can't speak up. If you're in a meeting and you see something going on or a system that's better, trying to toss away the whole system or talk about it from a different point of view, it just seems to cause frustration. And I know that that causes conflict at work too. One of the things that organizations have tried to do recently, we have organizations in the United States like OSHA and SHRM, where they are talking about things like the psychological state of people at work and creating a supportive workplace for people who think differently. And a lot of them adopt these surface level wellness programs where they're um claiming this alignment with trying to make the workplace happier, but sometimes it seems like they're going through the motions. So what have you learned in running this, I would imagine, incredibly chaotic organization, which it's controlled chaos, right?
Mhm.
What are some insights from that professionals in those spheres might be able to take away from it, or people who are trying to design wellness programs for organizations and trying to help foster that atmosphere for people to be able to share ideas? What are your insights after doing this for multiple years?
Well, first thing, what I've spoken with, you know this, I've spoken with so many nonlinear thinkers all over the world, and they feel misunderstood, and those are the first ones to leave the corporate world because it doesn't work.
Mhm.
And you don't want them to leave. You want to keep them. You want to have your nonlinear thinkers in your organization.
Sure.
So that's the first thing. Another thing is when we look at wellness programs where we want to solve this, then it's always, again, from a linear perspective. Then it's like, okay, we're going to take care of our people and everybody's included. And let's do a meditation program. And then this is the way to do meditation. And this is how it works. And then it's for everyone, and we did meditation in the company and nothing changed. Of course not. It's you many times it's based on a system. We have a program that is a system, and we give that to the people on the work floor within the company. Within the Octopus movement, we turn it around. We started with the people. We started with the first 50 people in the Octopus movement, and we were growing and growing. We have 143 founding members. We have 48 ambassadors. We have a management team of 28 people. But we started with the people first, and then we were looking at how do things operate. We started with the think tank. It was complete chaos. You remember that. There was no structure. And after a little while, we discovered the right system that works well with nonlinear thinkers. So, what we did in the Octopus movement is we didn't start with a system, but we started with the people and see what is necessary to take the most out of these people and get our results that we want to do. So we turn it around, and I see it with most companies. They start with the system and they're selling it to their employees or they're selling it to their customers. That's a big question mark if that's the best way to go in today's world.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to apply a system that you have to people, regardless of who they are, instead of doing it the other way around, then it's kind of a square peg into a round hole, which I
Yeah.
totally get. Um, we're gonna have to cough here to a commercial break here in a minute, but if you had to build a human-centered company from scratch, what would be those three first cultural values you'd embed then? And then we'll kind of leave that thought with everyone as we cut to our break.
Okay. Do I answer it already? Oh, sure.
Yeah, you
Or
could just
after
tell
the
me the
break?
three. Just go ahead and tell me the
Well,
three.
no, flexibility, creativity, inclusion. But those are the boring ones. I have three other ones. So flexibility, creativity, inclusion is the linear answer. And after the break, I will give another answer, which is
Great. I
more
can't
fun.
wait. I can't wait for the non-linear answer. That'll be even better. And hopefully you'll tune back in with us after the commercial
Okay.
break.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marsanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
And welcome back to the Happy Spot. I'm your host, Anshar Seraphim. Today, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to Perry Knoppert, aka Dr. Octopus of the Octopus Movement, talking about the value of nonlinear thinking in organizations and the lessons that he's learned in running his own nonlinear organization. So before the break, we were talking about if you had to build a human-centered company from scratch, what would be the three first cultural values that you would instill and embed? You gave the linear answer. Why don't you give us the non-linear answer?
So the linear answer is flexibility, creativity, and inclusion. Duh, right? Makes sense. But I was reading a book from Timothy Leary, and he always spoke about turn on, tune in, and drop out during the 60s. And I really like that. So I always use turn on your nonlinear thinking, tune into the human mycelium. I will explain that later, and drop out of the laws of thought. And the last one is very important. That's the linear conditioning that we have. Something happens, our brain, immediately fires away to us like, this is the reality, this is my outtake, this is my conclusion, this is what's going on. He's weird, this is wrong, we have to do it differently. And we can drop out of that law of thought, that we can say, okay, that is my conditioning talking to me, and I'm going to park that aside. Maybe that's inclusion. If you turn into the human mycelium, it means you turn into the connection we all have. Some people were saying to me in the beginning when I made the Octopus Movement, such a beautiful community. And I was like, it's not a community because I don't like that word. And I was searching for a long time how to use the correct language for me, because community is, if you're in a community, it means you are in a specific location or with a specific group of people or in a specific building. And I didn't want to have anything specific. I wanted to have it for everyone. So that's why I call it the human mycelium, because I was watching this documentary of Paul Stamets about the mycelium underground, where all the trees and plants are connected with each other, sharing nutrients. It's super cool. Google it. Ask your AI tool to explain to you what is a mycelium. It's awesome. So tune in to the human mycelium is also a kind of flexibility, that you see other possibilities, and turn on your nonlinear thinking is creativity. Turn on your nonlinear thinking means, don't think, see what shows up, use that, and go on. And that's for me the cultural value that is very important for me in the Octopus Movement. And that creates a human-centered organization. And we even have a tool now. Sorry for rambling, Ansar, but we've created the human score. It's a dashboard where you can measure in an organization how human-centered you are. And we do that for communities, for nonprofits, for the corporate world, for education as well. How human-centered are you as an educational institution? It's awesome. And it's connected to those values, because human centricity is, I think, in today's world with AI, very important.
Well, I mean, you spoke to it before. If you're starting with the system rather than the people, you're doing things backwards.
Yep.
And you talk about collective intelligence often. For our listeners in leadership, what's the difference between that and just working in teams?
Working in teams. So when people, I have to share this with you, I'm sure. I don't know if I can do this, but I have to share something. Working in teams, as soon as nonlinear thinking is involved and creativity, and we're talking about working in teams, most people start talking about lateral thinking, the thinking heads. Edward de Bono, it drives me nuts because it's so linear. His explanation in his thinking heads is very linear. Now you're wearing the hat of the creative person. Now you're wearing the hat of the person who doesn't agree. And that's working in teams, whereas collective intelligence is to let go of everything and really use the collective intelligence of all the people there to work together and not say, okay, you're always very creative, so now you say something very creative. It doesn't work that way because
Right.
maybe the accountant is now in a very nonlinear space and all of a sudden, because of his experience, has an amazing creative idea, but nobody would listen to him because he's the accountant. So please, collective intelligence is so much more interesting than working with teams in a lateral way. Sorry for saying this. Many people now listening are thinking, "Who is this idiot?" But think about it. It's interesting to use a different approach for this. It doesn't work that way anymore. So collective intelligence, for me, it's really combining all these nonlinear brains together and give space to dive in between thoughts. And it doesn't matter who's doing what, and allow everyone to work together.
So, I mean, let's talk about language then, because, a lot of people who work in, human resources and are trying to quantify all of these systems, they use a lot of buzzwords, everything from neuro inclusivity to, cognitive diversity, neurodivergence, wellness, inclusivity. How do we avoid these becoming buzzwords and keep them grounded in real lived change? Is there a different way, a non-linear way to make sure that this happens?
Well, to be aware that word bending is an option always. So for me, many times in my mind, it's like, what does it mean? We talk about weird. What is weird? It's so easy to use language. Talk about community. Oh, it's a community. Wait a second. What does a community really mean? And it's the same with neurodiversity. It's a very interesting word. With neurodiversity, Answer, this is so weird, and especially here in the Netherlands. Neurodiversity, there's only neurodivergent minds when there's a problem. So imagine this ADHD. Someone has ADHD, but has never been tested before. So here in the Netherlands, you're only get the label of neurodiversity as ADHD when there's a problem. If there's not a problem, you don't have ADHD. But this is so weird. At one time, I was at the university in Utrecht with a group of international students, and I gave them the assignment to design the space before neurodiversity because you're the same person. You have ADHD, and for some people it's a problem, and for some people it's not. But it's the same conditioning, and yet we use the language in a very linear way. This is neurodiversity. And and that's difficult. I've learned that the hard way during my homelessness because the weirdest thing that I discovered being homeless was that nothing really changed. For me, here everything stayed the same. Out there, everything changed. So I was the same Perry. I had the same thoughts, had the same feelings. When I was touching my dog, it was the same experience. For the people around me, because I was homeless, I was someone else and they
Hmm.
were judging me. And so the label homeless came and I was rejected, even by my own friends and family, because of that. So we need to be very careful with language. And that's why I also love the word nonlinear. We're all nonlinear. And it's so much fun to use that language at the office. Oh, that's a very linear approach. Oh, that's a very nonlinear view. Done. It's not stigmatizing, it's not using labels, and we cannot make any mistakes there. It's difficult. We need to be careful with that.
So, being careful, do you think that there are red flags in languages or in language or policies that signal an organization might be unintentionally excluding creative thinkers? What do they need to watch themselves for?
No, I don't think I can say there are red flags specifically, but how beautiful would it be to look at the other way? How beautiful would it be, Anshar, if an organization would be able to pause the system, to pause the linear thinking? How cool would that be? It's so simple. And I did the calculation once. How much money would that create in the world if we were able to pause the system. We're not doing that. Some people are hiding because of systems. I can't do that for you. Those are the rules. I'm sorry. But what happens if you're saying, wait a second, I'm pausing the system, I'm solving this for you. When everything is okay, I restart the system for you and you're fine. And we can see that in organizations as well. You are weird. You're super weird. And you're doing something in the meeting that is very inappropriate. But wait a second. Let's pause the system and allow you to do this. And it will create possibilities and it will sparkle new ideas and creativity. It's not that difficult, but we've conditioned everything into a linear structure where it's just this is the system, end of talking about it. We should be able to pause the system.
So speaking of self-editing then for organizations, what about with you specifically? What's a belief that you had to unlearn about yourself in order to do what you're doing now?
That way, because I was doing it as well. It's also like, oh, I was judging in the beginning. Oh, that's very linear. I don't want to go there, which is ridiculous. Then I'm doing the same thing everybody else is still doing.
Just in
And
reverse.
Just in reverse. That's stupid. And the other big thing that I had to change, and I've learned that again during my homelessness, was the approval of others. Now, I think many times, to tell you a secret, I think many times, where were you when I was homeless? So when someone has an idea or it's judgmental to me and it doesn't suit me, I'm thinking, where were you when I was homeless? I don't need approval from others to be myself. I don't fit in the box. So if someone is accusing me for being too weird or not fitting well in a box, that's not for me. It doesn't serve me. So what did I have to unlearn? I had to really unlearn the approval from others. Let me be myself. I want to be my authentic self, not to be authentic, but just to be myself. Because I think as soon as we're talking about I want to be my authentic self, you're not authentic anymore. I just want to be myself.
Yeah, I had a little bit of that experience myself, growing up nonverbal with autism. And I at first I tried to put so much effort into masking, making myself, appear to be like neurotypical people so that I would be able to have social relationships. And I never realized that even if I got what I was looking for, that I would be inherently questioning the nature of that connection later because I wasn't myself to get it. So I think authenticity is really important on this topic. When we get back from the commercial break, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to open up these conversations at the workplace, because obviously people can be intimidated about it, and a few more of your insights from the Octopus Movement. We'll kind of open the floor a little bit and talk about some of the exciting stuff that you're doing. So make sure, stay tuned. We're going to have more conversation with Dr. Octopus, Perry Knoppert from the Netherlands. Appreciate him joining us, and we'll see you soon after the break.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Ready to serve up success with a splash? Hi, I'm Bruce Kramer, a.k.a. the corporate cockroach.
I'm the Renaissance woman, Angie Snowball.
And I'm your strategy doctor, Dr. Navtej Desange, inviting you to serving up success with a splash.
Join us as we shake things up with real talk and real strategies centered around awareness, action, and accountability.
And yes, there really is a cocktail involved. Please join us and sip your way to success.
Serving up success with a splash, where wisdom meets happy hours. Cheers!
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 You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
And welcome back to the Happy Spot. I'm your host, Anshar Seraphim. If you're just tuning in, today I'm having the pleasure of speaking with Perry Knoppert, aka Dr. Octopus of the Octopus Movement, a global group, a human mycelium of nonlinear thinkers. Before we went off to the break, we're talking about how organizations can try to make some changes to make things not just more permissive for nonlinear thinkers, but to allow for real creativity. And obviously, you've had your own experience in running this global organization, or letting it run itself, depending on. You also mentioned the human score and talking about human centricity. So, kind of diving into that just a little bit, what metrics do you think matter most when trying to gauge real inclusivity or human centricity in an organization? What is it that people should be looking for in their organizations in order to be able to achieve this goal of allowing nonlinear thinkers to flourish?
No, I think it's important to create language, and I do think that nonlinear linear really helps in having the conversations at work. Um, it's easy to explain where I have a nonlinear idea, if you say that, if you say I have a crazy idea, then nobody takes it serious, maybe. But if you say I have a nonlinear idea, then it's like, oh, this is an idea that is not in line, but maybe interesting. So as soon as you start using the language of this is very linear to me, I have difficulty with that. I have a more nonlinear brain. Can we talk about that? Open up that conversation, and everybody can do that. Don't wait until your manager has done a course at the Octopus Movement and now understands what nonlinear thinking is. Go and have that conversation. It's not that difficult, and it opens up space. And I know this because I have three kids. I have three kids in the space of neurodiversity. They're all at school, they're all teenagers. When we started talking about linear, nonlinear at home, they took that with them to school. And I remember so well that my son, the middle one, Ola, he was like 14 or 15, and the school photographer was at school. And Ola is the funny one, and he is always doing weird things and funny things. So he wanted to be at the photo with everyone wearing his tiny little sunglasses. And the photographer said to him, "You can't wear your sunglasses." So he came home and he said, "Dad, the photographer was not a true artist. In my opinion, I thought he was very linear because I couldn't wear my sunglasses." You know, he wasn't upset, there wasn't a problem, and he could explain how things were working. I love that. It's we talked about language before. What language is everything. It's super important. Or say that you're an octopus. Say that you have 8 arms and three hearts and 9 brains. Talk about these things.
So there's this cool concept called a dare to suck meeting, where
Yeah.
you get a bunch of people together and there are no bad ideas, and everyone just has an opportunity to just throw something onto the bonfire and see what the smoke looks like. Do you think that creating thinking spaces like that is the way to incorporate nonlinear thinking best into an organization that's trying to, make ends with the fact that it's been, kind of organizationally rigid before that? Or is there a bigger change that needs to happen?
No. That's a perfect start, and we need different thinking to survive the next decade. It's everywhere. It's in Time, in Forbes. CEOs are talking about this. There's massive change going on with AI. We need different thinking to get somewhere. But the problem is that 98% of our thoughts are the same thoughts every day, all the time. So if you take your working group of your organization out to a different place and say, okay, now we're going to be creative, that's difficult because these people are still in their same pattern of thinking. Allowing the space, and we do that with the think tank, and I have to share this, and you know the think tank very well, Answer, and I'm so proud of this. The think tank in the Octopus Movement, then 40 nonlinear thinkers, weirdos, intelligent people, scientists, artists, entrepreneurs, they come on together and we have a digital whiteboard. We have 7 questions, and they get 5 minutes per question to answer these questions. And there are sticky notes, and there's music, and there's chaos, and there's time pressure. What do we want to do is we want to open up that space of not thinking, but sharing your thoughts. And that's the same thing as Dare to Suck, you know?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Not just go for it. And if we need different thinking to survive the next decade, then that's the way to go.
So what's one thing that you wish every nonlinear, neurodivergent, or just nonlinear thinker could hear and believe about themselves then? What belief systems need to change in ourselves if we want to start employing more nonlinear ideas?
That you're awesome. You know, and we spoke about that in the beginning of the interview. My dyslexia, and I have ADHD, and I'm on the spectrum. My time at school was horrible. I was doing everything wrong. I thought
Same.
I was stupid. Very simple. I thought I was plain stupid because it didn't fit into that system that school had. And I wish all nonlinear thinkers would be aware of the fact that they're awesome, that they have an amazing brain, an amazing mind, where they can dive into these black holes between thoughts, where there is creativity, where there are new ideas. And look at history, people, all the people that made a difference, all the ones that did awesome things are very nonlinear. You know, Steve Jobs, look at Steve Jobs or Einstein or Da Vinci or whatever. These are very nonlinear brains, not always understood. And I always say you need a linear result to celebrate your nonlinear brilliance, because otherwise the larger group doesn't understand. And you see that in history as well. Then
Yeah,
when
I
it's
share a birthday
celebrated in a little,
with Nikola Tesla, so I know all about that. Yeah.
here you go, right? And we need that linear result for people to see you, and then they accept your nonlinear brilliance. And before that, you're just a weird beep, you know, you're just people don't understand you. And then you celebrate results, and then everybody's like, he's brilliant. So all the nonlinear thinkers out there that they're thinking, nobody understands me, or you know, nobody gets me. We get you. We understand you. You're awesome. You know, join the Octopus Movement. We have more than 9,000 people from all over the world that are very nonlinear together, building the most beautiful things.
So I'm really sad about this. We're almost out of time. I do want to point out that you can learn more about Perry and the Octopus Movement at theoctopusmovement.org. And I wanted to give the last couple of minutes here for you to share what the Octopus Movement is currently working on. What are your current projects? What are things that we can expect to see coming out of the movement? And how can people get involved?
Okay. Sign up, become a member of the Octopus Movement. It's for free. It's in a nonprofit. You can join the think tank. Can do all kinds of cool stuff. You can also become a founding member. That means you're in the inner family of the Octopus Movement. We will only have 250 founding members, and we have now 48 something. So becoming a founding member is still a possibility. We've created Tell Tom. That's an app that is awesome. It's a very simple app, and it's in stage 1 right now. It's based on what happened in our think tanks. We have all these nonlinear minds and working together and ideas, but we were also thinking, but what's really going on with the world? What's really happening? So this app, telltom.inc, is there for people to share their thoughts that nobody wants to hear. They go into a collective database. It's all anonymous, and we use that to address things that are important in the world, because we want to solve 6 things in the world: homelessness, hunger, climate change, education, leadership, and well-being. So we need to know what's going on in the world. That's Tell Tom. We have the think tanks for other organizations to use us, work with us. If you have a big problem, you don't know how to solve that, hire the think tank of the Octopus Movement. You get your own designated 40, 50 nonlinear thinkers. We have the Human Score, which is a dashboard of human centricity, and we're building the new platform of the human mycelium, where the concept is very simple. We combine artificial intelligence with human intelligence with community, and there's only one question: what do you need? And then everything starts building around that. That's the Octopus Movement. And I can say so many more things, unsure, but I will keep it this way.
Well, I want to thank our audience for tuning in. Dr. Octopus has definitely inspired me. I think that one of the interesting things about the way that I think is I recognize right out of the gate that I have, biases that go into the way that I think, and that sometimes even things that I'm very, very good at, it creates blind spots. And one of the things that I've really learned to appreciate being a founding member and getting to do the think tanks and engage the way that I have with the Octopus Movement is getting to see that benefit of outside perspectives and difference in thinking, and to be able to suspend my certitude about the way that the world works and what the best way is to solve problems. So I want to extend a personal thank you from the Happy Spot, from me myself as a fellow, a fellow Octopus member and a founding member, and the privilege of getting to work with the think tank. We're really excited to hear more about these apps. Maybe we might have a feature or something in the future, be able to talk about that. And just want to appreciate your time and joining us today. Thank you so much for your time, Perry.
Thank you, Answer, and I'm so excited that you were interviewing me. We know each other quite well, and I think you're an awesome human, and I'm so happy you're with us in the Octopus Movement. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, The Happy Spot. Thank you for being here, and please reach out to me if anyone has any questions, want to talk about anything, just reach out. I'm always here.